Hey everybody, Chromos here with another War Thunder Simulator battle video, and the first from patch 1.47. Now in this video I fly the Bf-109 K-4, the last Bf-109 that saw service and the Messerschmitt counterpart to the Focke-Wulf 190 D9. So let's talk a little bit about the plane before we take a look in a battle in it. Now in my D9 video I have mentioned that I consider the D9 the best German high-tier prop because of its speed and incredible dive characteristics, giving it the ability to get out of tough spots easier than a slower plane. And all things considered, I still think that overall the D9 is the most capable German high-tier prop. However, having said that, I personally like the Bf-109 K-4 better, and I think the plane has a good chance to replace the Bf-109 F1 as my favorite Bf-109. Compared to the D9, the K-4 is of course a bit slower and it can't dive as fast. Also, it's not rolling as well as the D9, but few planes roll as well as the 190. On the plus side though, the Bf-109 is quite a bit lighter than a D9, and even though it gained some weight in comparison to earlier 109 models, so did most of its competition, and the K-4 remains to be very lightweight compared to its competition. So it has a lower wing loading than a 190. However, since the 109's wings are pretty small, the K-4 still has a higher wing loading than most of the planes it will face. So, just like the D9, the K-4 is an energy fighter which likes to fight in the vertical if at all possible, as you would expect from a Bf-109. Now, one of the big upsides of the K-4, as with most Bf-109s, is its great power-to-weight ratio. The K-4 can, thanks to its improved DB605 engine and MW50 engine cooling, reach between 1800 and 2000 horsepower on war emergency power. Now, a lot of its competition, like Tempests or Griffon engine Spitfires, can get even more horsepower out of their engines and have a faster top speed thanks to that. However, they are also heavier than the K-4, quite a lot heavier in case of the Tempest or the late Mark 22 and Mark 24 Spitfires. So the Bf-109, despite having overall less horsepower, will reach a higher power-to-weight ratio on war emergency power than almost all of its competition, and its lightweight means it can keep energy up well as regain it somewhat quickly if lost. That means in a situation where the plane can enter a proper energy fight, for example meeting an opponent head-on at somewhat similar energy levels, it can gain an energy advantage and beat most opposition in vertical maneuvers. However, you of course cannot simply enter a vertical fight in just every situation. If you already have an opponent behind you in fire range, going vertical will not help you at all. He can simply follow you and shoot you down while you slow down. And this is where the D9 has an advantage. Thanks to its faster speed and excellent dive performance, it can evade pretty easily in such a situation, given it has high enough altitude. The Bf-109 K-4 on the other hand can't really outdive any of its main opposition it will face, and while it is the fastest Bf-109, at its battle rating most enemy fighters will be at least as fast or faster. So if you got someone on your tail in fire range, you will have to fight, and as I've already mentioned, while the K-4's wing loading is much lower than that of a D9, it is still a bit higher than that of most fighters it will face. And we will take a look at such a situation later on in the video. Well then, let's talk about the plane's weapons really quickly. The Bf-109 K-4, unlike previous Bf-109s, comes with the 30mm Mark 108 cannon as standard primary armament instead of the 20mm MG151. Now, this change in main armament has advantages and disadvantages. The advantage is obvious. When the 30mm Minengeschosse hit, they usually do lots of damage and can even take large multi-engine bombers down reasonably quickly. Though on occasions the gun can be a bit unreliable. I have to say though that I do not have the 30mm belts unlocked for this plane, so I have only the default belt with fewer Minengeschosse than one of the later belts. On the negative side, the gun has a very low muzzle velocity and rate of fire, so you want to be close to the target when you fire, and leading the target is more challenging too. And the cannon has a somewhat small ammo supply, only a little over 60 rounds in total, so it will run out of ammo a lot faster than the MG151. Now, the K-4 was delivered with the Mark 108 installed from the factory, but it still had the option to replace the 30mm cannon with the 20mm MG151, and as far as I know, we will get this option in War Thunder as well. I am however not sure yet if I would use the 20mm or the 30mm, both have their advantages. I like the high damage of the Mark 108. The 20mm is of course better at longer ranges, but I prefer to shoot at very short ranges anyway. I will test this some more when I have the 30mm belts unlocked though. Now, the secondary armament are two 30mm heavy machine guns, and the K-4 is the first plane where I actually get a feeling on how they perform. Of course, I already used them on earlier Bf-109s and the 190s, but on all those planes they came together with 20mm MG151, which has enough ammo that I rarely ran out of them, so therefore I never had the chance to try the 30mm machine guns on their own before. On the Bf-109 K-4, on the other hand, with less ammo for the main cannon, being down to the 13mm machine guns is more common, and thankfully I would say the 13mm guns perform quite well, unlike the 7.92mm on earlier Bf-109s. Sure, it is still just two heavy machine guns, not cannons, so you can't expect wonders from them. However, I would say the 13mm perform quite well, and are one of the few machine guns at the moment that perform the way they should in my opinion. Now, one more thing I want to mention really quick. As with the D9, the K-4 I fly in this video is not fully upgraded. I mention that because this makes quite a big difference for an energy fighter, so keep that in mind if you judge the capability of the plane in this video. Well then, let's take a look at the fight in the plane. Here we are on the Norway map, and our opposition this week are both British and US planes. On this map, when I start on the German side, I like to climb a bit to the southwest at the start of the battle to approach possible enemy fighters a bit from the side. But I pretty quickly notice AA fire, and it's over the friendly fleet, so there have to be enemy planes nearby. Now, I'm not sure at this point if it's just AI spotter planes, but I expect the AA fire will draw fighters from both teams closer at the start of this match, so I moved this way. And I did quickly spot two planes in the distance, and I close in. I expected one of the two to be enemy and the other one friendly, and as they separate I focus on the higher one as it would be the bigger threat. The plane is coming my way and then dived past me, and it is indeed a Spitfire, a Griffin-powered one, but not one of the Mark 20s it seems. So I go vertical and I hope I have enough speed to engage if the Spitfire is coming around for an attack. I lose sight on the Spitfire for a short moment as I come around, and I have to look around a bit to reacquire it. It seems though the Spitfire did not come around to engage me. As I find it again, it passes below me, flying the other direction again, so I loop around and go after it. At this point it seems to me that the Spitfire is not aware of my approach, as it continues in a slight turn, and I slowly catch up to it. I hope I might be able to sneak close enough to fire if he really has not seen me. We are both at about the same energy level at this point. I am a bit faster, but the Spitfire on the other hand is a bit higher than me, but I am of course behind him. The Spitfire is climbing a bit, and so am I of course as I follow him. That is a bit of an advantage for me, as the K-4 thanks to its great power-to-weight ratio at Web has an exceptional climb rate, and this allows me to close in a bit. Now, as I get closer though, it seems the Spitfire does spot me, and does a split S and dives away in a pretty tight descending turn. And I of course don't want to follow a Spitfire in a turn like that, especially since it is not one of the higher wing-loading Mark 20s. I could not keep up with him in a turn, so I pull back up and go vertical, hoping I can loop around and attack him from above. I was a bit slower than I generally like when entering a loop, but in this situation it will have to do. The Spitfire comes around in a tight turn and climbs up to me, and I assume he does not have the energy to keep his nose straight pointing up, and I have the advantage as I come down to attack, and I get him in my pass. I get a good hit and the Spitfire starts to burn, and is out of the fight shortly after. Now, as I move away from the engagement, I hear another prop nearby, so I check my rear to make sure there is nothing chasing me, but I can't find anything nearby. It was probably just a Focke-Wulf 190 that is also in the area. But it is of course better to make sure. However, there is nothing behind me. As I look around though, I can see AA fire again in the distance, and I check my map and it is our fleet firing again, so there has to be another enemy plane. So I move that way to take a look. As I get closer I can see that it is a twin-engine plane, and it turns out to be a Beaufighter, one of the AI spotter planes. Not a target I want to waste my time on at this moment, but since I'm already flying that way, I decide to give it a squirt as I fly past, and then look for a better target. I don't hit much, but still I get an assist for my efforts as another 109 finishes the Beaufighter off. So after that little attack, I move away from the area. I want to climb a bit and regain some altitude, and then return to the fight with an altitude advantage. But as I look around to check my rear, I can see a lot of red tracers in the distance. This has to be a plane with 50 cal machine guns engaging one of our planes. So I turn around and try to get there as fast as I can. With a thick cloud between me and the target, it's hard to keep track of its position, and I fear I lost him, but as I get out of the cloud, the target, it turns out to be a Mustang, is to my left. A second K-4 is closing in on him too, and normally I would in this situation have let him attack first while providing cover in case more enemy fighters come in, but in this case the Mustang is actively shooting a friendly and I want him down as fast as possible, so I go for him too, as I think I can build up more speed and be on him faster from my position. Sadly, I can't reach the Mustang in time and the friendly, a Focke-Wulf 490, goes down. I am however closing in on the Mustang fast, and I will soon be close enough to fire. I have built up more than enough speed in my dive that the Mustang can't get away. He instead dives down to the deck and tries to evade flying close to the ships and the island. I am aiming for his wing at first, as hitting with a 30mm will most likely take it off, but just as I get close enough to fire and press the trigger, the Mustang rolls out of the way. My shots narrowly miss the wing. I fire a second burst as soon as I can, but it also fails to hit. So I give up trying to go for the wing and instead aim for the center. I do get a hit with my third attempt, though it does not look like it did much. The fourth burst, however, even though it also does not look impressive, must have done some damage, as the Mustang's flight path gets a bit wobbly after the second hit, and it goes down shortly after. I assume I damaged his controls in some way. However, just after the Mustang goes down, I hear the typical sound of 20mm cannons behind me, so I pull back on the stick to evade and look back. There's a Tempest right behind me closing in fast. Too fast. His second burst passes below me and the Tempest overshoots. He passes right below me and pulls up to my right, and comes around in a wide barrel roll. I match his flight path to slot in behind him as he comes back down. He first turns to my left, and then as I follow him, he reverses and back to my right. The Tempest is faster than my K-4, but with my power to weight ratio I have the acceleration to keep up at least a little bit should he make a run for it. But so far he's turning to evade, and here the lighter K-4 is more energy efficient and I can close in. And eventually I get the Pipper on the target and fire my last remaining 30mm cannon rounds into the Tempest, which bursts into flames and is out of the fight. Now I am out of cannon rounds and my water temperature is pretty high, so I want to throttle back a bit and slowly climb back to altitude while cooling down my engine, and then make my way back to base to get some more ammo for the cannon. There's still a lot of AA fire and I take a hit from AA, which startles me a bit. But all the AA fire for now seems to be coming from the enemy fleet behind me, so it does not indicate enemy planes in the area. However, suddenly I notice the friendly fleet in front of me opening up as well, and they fire right behind me. I look around just in time to see a Spitfire closing in. I try to evade, but I'm a second too late, and I take a hit to my fuselage and wing. This hit, unknown to me at this point, also takes out my engine cooling. I press the nose down and throttle up to gain some speed to see if I can still outrun the Spitfire, despite the damage my plane has taken. If I can do so, good. If not, I will have to try to make the Spitfire overshoot as he gets closer, a tall order. There are not many other options than that though. As my water temperature is still pretty high, I try not to use war emergency power too much, but since my cooling system is damaged, the temperature is going up anyway. I do have trouble spotting the Spitfire behind me at first, and can't really tell if I'm faster or not. But then I can see a Focke-Wulf 490 coming in and attacking the Spitfire. The Spitfire changes target and goes after the 190 and seems to put pressure on it. Now, with the Focke-Wulf 490 getting the Spitfire off my tail, I am clear and I decide to return the favor. My plane's handling is not great anymore and I don't have cannon rounds left, but I hope with the Spitfire focused on the Focke-Wulf 490 I can go on the offensive and surprise the Spitfire. So I turn around and fly back towards the Spitfire, which is by now engaging the Focke-Wulf 490. I have throttled back a bit more again to try to get the water temperature back down. But now I notice that I have indeed a damaged cooling system and the temperature is rising anyway, so eventually I throttle back up to get as much power as possible while the engine is still running, which is hopefully long enough to engage the Spitfire. Now the Focke-Wulf 490 came my way and dives down in front of me and passes below me, with the Spitfire behind him. I don't want to turn after them with my damaged plane, so I pull up to attack from above. But as I look down, the metal bar of the canopy blocks my view and I lose sight on the two for a moment. I need a moment to reacquire them. It seems though they are over the island, and thankfully I eventually see the traces of the Spitfire, so I can pinpoint his position again. So with the two inside again, I can move there to attack. They are lower and slower now, and I hope that will make hitting the Spitfire easier. With my plane in poor shape and the cooling system down, I won't get many chances. Meanwhile, the Focke-Wulf 490 does a good job using its roll rate to keep the Spitfire at bay, which allows me to get close enough to fire a burst into the Spitfire as I pass it. I fire a long burst into the Spitfire and I got a few good hits, though I don't know how much damage I did. I don't think it was enough at this time, so I come around for another attack. As it turns out though, my machine guns did indeed enough damage and the Spitfire goes down. Now with him down I try to throttle all the way back to maybe save my engine long enough to get back to base, but it is too late and I spent the rest of the battle on my own little island admiring the view. Thankfully most enemy planes are down by now and my team gets to rest quickly, so we won that round. So that's it for this battle. Let's take a look at one more fight from another battle I want to show you. I promised at the start to show a situation with a plane attacking from behind, so let's take a look. We are on the Norway map again, and I came to help a 109 that was under attack by a Mustang, and I did find the damaged 109, but not the Mustang. So I circle above the Bf 109, as I expect the Mustang to still be down there somewhere trying to finish the damaged 109 off. It turns out though the Mustang instead managed to get on my tail as I was doing so, and he is close enough to fire, so I have to take evasive action. Now with the Mustang this close I would give him lots of opportunity to shoot me if I would just try to run away. I can't get out of his fire range fast enough even if I would be faster, which depending on his energy and speed when I first saw him I might not be. So instead I invade by doing a mix of scissors and rolling scissors to hopefully draw him in closer and maybe force an overshoot eventually. I mostly try to utilize barrel rolls to go for rolling scissors instead of flat scissors, which are better suited for better rolling planes like the Focke-Wulf 490, and whenever I assume I'm crossing in front of him, I try to maneuver in an unpredictable way, for example to use the rudder to push the nose down to keep him from simply lining up his crosshair in front of my flight path and pressing the trigger as I fly through. After a bit of this, it seems I have actually opened up the distance between us a bit, so I push down the nose to test if I have the necessary acceleration here to get out of his weapons range in time, but as I look back I can see that this will not happen, he is still too close, so I go back to evading him to buy time and hopefully draw him in closer. I throttle back a bit to slow down to aid the process, but not too much, I don't want to lose all my speed, and I pull up a bit. As I see him turning into me again from the side though, I push the nose down to again not fly through his line of fire in a straight line. And after that I roll around and turn into him in a scissors movement, and again I push the nose down a bit, this time with the rudder, as I see his nose coming around and pointing at me. I do get a bit slow though, so I throttle up again to not lose too much maneuverability. I push the nose down once more to move out of his line of fire, and then I continue to evade in a series of barrel rolls. It seems though that the distance between us got a bit bigger again and I don't want that, so I again throttle back to lose some speed, while keeping the barrel rolls up. I manage to draw the Mustang closer again, but one of my barrel rolls is a bit sloppy and more of an aileron roll, and that gives the Mustang an opportunity to hit. Thankfully it's only a glancing hit. But the Mustang also came in a lot closer, and as he comes back towards me and I roll around him again, he does finally overshoot. He reverses immediately and pulls into me hard, and I have to push the nose down again to evade getting hit. However, I slowly get the upper hand, and one more barrel roll around him and can almost get the crosshair on him, but not quite. He goes up and pulls into me again. I want to turn into him as fast as I can to take away his angle of attack, but since I am now pretty slow I almost stall the plane twice, and this slows me down sufficiently that the Mustang gets another burst off that hits my wing. But now I'm finally in a position to return fire. I line up his flight path and press the trigger. And I get a good hit on the cockpit, and this is it for this little fight. This fight was very enjoyable to play and I hope also to watch. There are one or two extra things I want to mention about it though. First, since the whole exercise was about making the opponent overshoot, some might wonder why I kept throttling back up and then down again. Wouldn't it be faster to put the throttle to 0 and keep it there? And this is indeed something you see quite a few people do in game. put the throttle to 0 when they have someone behind them, and even drop landing flaps, and I have even seen some drop their gear to, so to speak, hit the brakes as hard as possible and slow down as fast as possible. Now, the problem there is, while that would most likely make the opponent overshoot, it would also mean that he would have a huge speed and energy advantage over you. He would simply use his speed to loop around, go in the vertical and attack again, being most likely in a better position than before thanks to more energy. So the point of this is to make the opponent overshoot, but with him having as little extra energy over you as possible, so when he does overshoot, he can't simply fly away or go in the vertical and be out of range within 2 seconds. So you want this overshoot to be a slow process if possible. That of course means you have to evade the fire of an opponent longer, that's the tricky part. But having a plane behind you which you can't simply outturn is always an uphill battle. Now, the second small thing I wanted to mention during this little fight, there were a few situations where it would have been useful to use combat flaps. For example, at the end where I was almost stalling the plane, flaps would have prevented that. However, at the moment flaps are extremely fragile and have a tendency to break off. So at the moment, in a lot of situations, it is simply impossible to use flaps as you normally would. Just 2 things I wanted to mention. And well, this is it for this video. I will make another K-4 video in the future, as I felt I could not show off the plane's capability as an energy fighter all that well in this one. Till then, I hope it was entertaining, thanks for watching, and maybe I'll see you next time.